So, a couple of days ago, I made a video where I went over the future plans that Blizzard announced regarding the next 3 years of professional StarCraft 2. Now, what I've got for you today is a best-of-3 series that was played during the ESL Open Cup #1. The very first of the weekly tournaments, which is one of the additions that is being made. In case you haven't seen that video, by the way, I'll go ahead and post a link to it down below in the description of this one. But here we go, game #1. We find ourselves on World of Sleepers. Spawning here in the bottom left-hand corner, playing with the red Zerg drones. She's from Canada, although she spends a significant portion of the year over in South Korea. We're looking inside of the main base of Scarlett. And her opponent in the opposite corner, technically from Germany, although nowadays he actually lives over in Canada as well. Playing here with the blue Zerg pieces for Team Liquid, we have TLO. So, I'm a big fan of weekly tournaments. Oftentimes what happened, at the very least over the last few years, is that with the decline of weekly tournaments, a lot of pro gamers just simply only showed their best strategies during offline events. Now, obviously it makes sense because you don't really want to show your best strategies all too often, but what that means is that we really see the top level guys play a couple of times a year. There's obviously, at the very least over the last few years, there were obviously a couple of offline events, say 5, 6, maybe 7 or 8 or so. Kind of depends on how many they decide to sign up for and how many they qualify for. But in general, we didn't really see the pro gamers compete all too often, especially the top level guys. They get seated into tournaments very often. They don't have to go through qualifiers. You don't really see their playstyles and their strategies very often at all. I believe the last time I saw Serral play was during Nation Wars, and that's already a month and a half or so ago. And I'm really curious to see what kind of style he prefers right now in all of the different matchups, now that the new balance patch is out for a little bit already. Now, what the cool thing is, right? The cool thing about these weekly tournaments is that there's not only some money on the line, but there's also EPT points. So, if you win the weekly tournament, you get awarded 10 EPT points, which I think stands for ESL Pro Tour or something along those lines. If you get second place, you get 5 points. And by earning those points, you can seat yourself into bigger tournaments that will happen over the course of the year. So it's really cool because these weekly tournaments, they're going to be played on the EU, the Korean, and then also the American server. They're open to everyone. And hopefully that means that we will see some of these top-level pro gamers participate in those tournaments a little bit more often as well. We'll see, though, what the game is going to look like, but I'm excited for it because it means that I get to cast more games of some of these top-level players, and especially players like, for example, Scarlett, right? And actually the same can be said for TLO as well. They don't really participate in a lot of online events. They don't really play too many online cups. It's pretty difficult to get my hands on their replays, and if they're going to be participating in these kind of tournaments very regularly, say every single week, I can cast their games a lot more often. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to what it's going to be like, especially once the tournament gets, a little bit more common, I guess. One of the things about online events is that pretty much all of them use a different sign-up system. And a lot of pro gamers just don't really want to bother because, you don't really know exactly how the sign-up works. You don't really know exactly, when the tournament is going to start, who's organizing it, how smoothly everything will run, how much time you have to dedicate to it. If it's a weekly thing, right, and you know it's going to be happening, it's significantly easier to dedicate your time to it as well. So I think it's going to be one of those things that we will probably see the top dogs play in very regularly as well. Alright, so very interesting opening right here actually from TLO. He decides to go for the close by third base. This is actually something I haven't seen in Zerg vs. Zerg before. Pretty much everyone always expands vertically on this map, right? They decide to take the base to the south, which is exactly actually what Scarlett is doing in the meantime on the other side of the map. She's going up towards the evolution chamber as well, which has already been acquired, if I'm not mistaken, by TLO. He hasn't started up any upgrades yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the +1 missile, or maybe even the +1 melee here in just a bit. So ZVZ, it's a difficult matchup. A lot of the top-level games still end with the Zergling Baneling phase. Oh, TLO, though, decides to go for a very quick lair here before starting up any upgrades, before going for a Roach Warren. Usually when you see players go for the really quick lair, it means that they are taking a bit of a gamble. You might still make the Roach Warren, but I think he probably wants to go for a Spire. This is one of the build orders that we've seen, actually Serral play as well. I've seen Raynor play it quite a bit as well. So you're faking going for a Roach Ravager based style. You get the upgrade here as well, and obviously you can see the little wiggle if you get a Zergling in this position. You can see the little wiggle, and you can see that something is researching, but you don't really know if it's going to be melee or missile. And it can oftentimes throw the opponent off a little bit. In the meantime, though, on the other side of the map, Scarlett opening up very conventionally. She's decided to go for the +1 missile upgrade. She's going for the Roach Warren right now. Lara's coming up. We see the Overlord speed as well. This is the most standard approach for the ZVZ matchup. Okay, yeah, so Spire is coming up. Okay, this is cool. So let's talk about the Spire versus Roach Ravager style for a little bit. I think on paper, the Roach Ravager style is probably superior. However, the thing about the Roach Ravager style, if you go up against Mutas, is that you lose map control 100%. And one of the most important things to do when you play a Roach Ravager into, like, say, for example, Hydralisk against someone who is going Mutas, is that you need to get a 4th base up. When you're only on like 6 gases, right, so you have 3 base gas mining, you can't really tech up very easily towards a Hive. And if you can tech up towards a Hive, you have 4 bases mining. So that's exactly what TLO is doing right now. I think actually Scarlett wants to do a very similar thing. If you can go up to a 4th base, so I guess on this map you only get a 7 gas geyser, but regardless, if you go up towards a 4th base, you get that additional gas going. You find yourself in a much better spot to go up towards a Hive and eventually a Vipers. So the ultimate counter to Mutalisk is Hydra Viper Lurker. If you can go up to a Hydra Viper Lurker, I mean, it's the ultimate unit composition in ZVZ in general. It's absolutely massive. So TLO right now, indeed, going for the Muta style, and he's trying to get the kill on the 4th. This is huge. Getting the kill on the 4th would be massive. He's got to commit to it as well. Looks like the Zerglings just barely will be killed, I think. Oh my god, that's going to be close. One Baneling actually coming as well. Ooh, Scarlett barely manages to keep that expansion alive, and this is super critical. So 12 Mutas are being produced. TLO saved up a lot of resources there. Scarlett, in the meantime, is going to build up that gas count. She's got a decent amount of creep spread as well. Holding on to this expansion is absolute key. Already, though, do we have the Hydralisk den done? She's straight up going towards the Lurker den as well. So very passive play. I feel like pretty much all of the games I've casted of Scarlett recently, she's playing very aggressively. Not this game, though. She's barely moved across the map other than with some scouting Zerglings. But here we go. It's the first bit of aggression. Getting that Spore here is so big as well. Queens are going to buy a little bit of time for the Spore Claws to finish. Nice little bit of micro there from TLO. Loses 1 Muta there. Keeps one of them alive as well, but this is huge. Okay. So with that gas now secured, right? Scarlett can start to transition towards a Hive, but also towards Lurker play. So the Hive will probably be started up here once she's got like a sufficient amount of Lurkers out. Once you get Lurkers going, obviously, you can stop a lot of Roach transitions. You can stop a lot of plays with, for example, Lings and Banes as well. But obviously, TLO doesn't have to go too heavily into the Mutas. One of the things, actually, that I personally really enjoy playing right now is going for, like, Ling Bane early on. Basically what TLO is doing here. Then make, like, 10 to 15 or so Mutas, which is enough to keep your opponent pinned back. And actually, ooh, this is that's very painful. Well, you didn't lose too much there, but still a little bit risky. But you go for like 10 to 15 or so Mutalisk, and then you start up to transition towards Lurkers. And 10 to 15 Mutas seems to be the correct amount to stop any Roach pushes from moving across the map. And since the Lurker den, with the new patch, built so much quicker, you can get a lot of value off of getting those dudes out. Now, here we go. We do have a couple of Banelings trying to roll into the Spore. It's just barely not going to happen. Great defense so far by Scarlett. Playing very, very cautiously. She's got those Lurkers out right now as well, and that's going to make the defense significantly easier. Really making a ton of Spores, by the way. We have 5 more Spore Crawlers coming up. She already has 10 of them as well. Wow. Okay. I've never seen anyone actually make that many Spore Crawlers. Now, here we go. The Banelings rolling forward. Banelings deal bonus damage against light, which is what those Hydralisk are. And, while TLO certainly is looking to see if he can end this game right here, right now, he's going to be pleasantly, well, I guess not so pleasantly surprised once he sees those Lurkers as well. A couple of Mutas once again take damage, and Scarlett holds on once again by the skin of her teeth. Banelings, though, once again, looking for the Queens, looking for those Hydralisk. The Hydras, if they die, that is going to make this cleanup job significantly easier for those Mutalisk. It looks like she actually manages to push through. Once obviously the Hydras are gone, the Spore Crawlers are going to be the only anti-air. Most of the Queens are picked off as well. TLO pushing very aggressively right now. The Lynx are going to be able to kill a couple of those Spore Crawlers, and that might open the door for those Mutas to move in as well. Hive, though, is going to finish up here in just a little bit for Scarlett. She's trying to get into a good position where the Zerglings can't get the full wraparound. Lynx, though, getting a lot of value done, and I think she's actually in a little bit of trouble. Right now, the Zerglings can start going to town on some of these buildings, maybe some of the workers as well. Mutas are going to be used right here to zone away these Hydras, and for the time being, at the very least, TLO has a firm control of what's going on. He's going to look at killing this third base, and it will indeed be picked up. Very nicely done. Now, here's the real counter. Vipers are coming up. So Vipers have a spell called Parasitic Bomb, as I'm sure you are familiar. Parasitic Bomb deals 120 damage. And guess what? Mutas have 120 life. Now, Mutas also regenerate life pretty quickly, so usually one Parasitic Bomb is not enough to kill Mutas if they are at full health. But they're all gonna be one shot away if they didn't already take a little bit of damage prior to it. So, Parasitic Bomb, absolutely phenomenal. It mostly comes down to the splits at that point, right? So, if Scarlett can land the Parasitic Bomb, it means that the Mutas are gonna have to be split up very, very quickly. If that doesn't happen, all of the Mutas will die very, very quickly as well. Okay, so new base has been acquired. I've got a feeling this one, it's gonna take some damage. It might actually stay alive. That's a lot of Hydralisk. TLO not paying attention. Does manage to force the cancel though. And I'm really quite impressed with the way that TLO is playing this, but I'm a little bit worried here as well for what's gonna happen next. So like I mentioned, right? Ultimate unit composition for ZVZ. Hydra, Lurker, Viper. You need like 8 gases in order to properly pull that off. TLO though, ooh, going for a big Zergling drop into the main base. This is something I haven't seen before either. There are Spore Crawlers set up, but if you can kill that... Oh my god, here we go, the Parasitic Bomb! Oh, he just barely finds the one Muta that was indeed being hit. Does mean that most of them stay alive. If you don't pay attention, it deals so much damage. You lose all those Mutas so quickly. Once again, we have the Parasitic Bomb coming up. You need to get the split off. Nicely done. Great micro there, actually, by the German Zerg player. Keeps all of those Mutas up and running for now. And while few of them will be picked off, at the very least, he's still certainly in this game. Okay. So, Hydra, Lurker, Viper technically kills everything. One of the most common transitions here for TLO, if it is not Lurkers himself, is, of course, the Ultralisks. He's going up towards a Hydra then at this point, probably anticipating that the game would be over right now, but I'm starting to like this position here for Scarlett quite a bit. Yeah, she's still behind army supply-wise. Yeah, she doesn't have the best mining, but she's got a good set of upgrades, and she has a really powerful unit composition. I think top priority right now for her is to max out on Hydra, Lurker, Viper, and eventually move across the map. I'm quite interested as well in the dedication, right, to all of those static defensive structures. Really cool. I've actually been struggling quite a bit when playing this style that she's playing. And I think one of the reasons is probably that I don't get enough static defense. So I'm learning here. Really, really cool. Banelings, though, once again, looking for the good fight. If the Banelings can get a connection on the Hydras, this is going to be much, much easier for TLO. But Scarlett in good position. She's slowly, methodically defending this push, and she's slowly getting to the point where she's maxed out as well. Once again, Parasitic Bomb's coming up. Good split there initially. Good split there secondly as well. But all of this is buying time and gets her closer to that maxed out state. Okay, so it is going to be a transition as well, actually, from TLO towards the same style. So, at the very least, he still has a lot of Lings and Banes, which is nice and all. Once again, another Parasitic Bomb is coming up. He's making the transition right now towards Hydras and Lurkers as well. Probably we'll get those Lurkers going in a little bit. Yeah, there we do indeed now have the Seismic Spines ability, which is going to improve the range of those Lurkers quite a bit. But he's going to start upgrading these units right now from behind. Only just now is when we see +1 missile and carapace coming up as to like Scarlett's upgrades at this point in the game. I mean, they're looking a little bit better. She's already at +1, +2. Okay, so second upgrade also now being researched here for the Lurkers. This is going to increase the speed at which they burrow. And Scarlett, I mean, if this is going to be a victory for her, right? So far, it's been extremely clean. Yeah, she lost the third base once, but it didn't really affect the tech route too much, and it wasn't enough for TLO to close out the game. I'm really impressed with the way that she's holding on because this is extremely difficult. Dedicating the right amount of units at the right location is a really tough thing to pull off. Now, Scarlett does have to be careful. Yep. You don't want to have your units abducted. Once again, Parasitic Bomb's pretty good as well. Accidentally hits the Overseer. Actually, maybe it wasn't an accident. It's not a mothership. It doesn't work like that. No -400 this time around, but there certainly is a very scary force here for Scarlett. So, for all intents and purposes, she's now maxed out. She's got all of the upgrade that she needs. She's got the economy secured as well. And I think this is going to be the moment, after like 15 minutes or so of sitting back, that's probably going to be the moment where she finally decides to push across the map. Amazing defense there. Let's see if TLO can handle this counterattack. What does he have in the meantime at home, by the way? He did make his own Lurkers. Obviously, Lurkers in defensive positions, still very risky. Still very, very strong. Can't just move into a bunch of burrowed lurkers. But Blinding Cloud does affect lurkers as well, and, well, if a couple of those stray units are picked up for practically free, that makes the game a lot more interesting. Lurkers decide to burrow on both sides of the map. Blinding Clouds are coming down as well. Abducts on all sides. Both players trying to get the best engagement possible. Really good Blinding Clouds there for TLO, but I think there might just be a little bit too much for Scarlett. Scarlett just simply has the superior unit count. She's got the superior army composition. She has the better upgrades, and while obviously, TLO wanted to see if he could close the game out early, and I think this works against many weaker Zerg players. It was not meant to happen in game number 1 of this series. I think that Scarlett is going to just simply rally more and more Hydralisks across the map right now. We have 22 on that production tab, and they just finished up. At the very least, the majority of them did. These lurkers, they're going to be extremely difficult to deal with. Say goodbye to the drone count. She's even target firing right now with the lurkers. Very, very painful. A lot of damage is being done. 28 drones, 33 drones, 35 drones. They all fall very quickly. And with Scarlett's reinforcements right now getting here as well, TLO is forced to tap out. So, by the way, just to clarify, right? The weekly tournaments, they are open for sign up to everyone. So sometimes I see in the comment section of the video, like, hey, Lowko, I'm getting pretty good at StarCraft. I want to play in tournaments as well. How do I qualify for them? Do I have to travel to events? How do I participate in an online cup? How does this whole thing work? They are open to sign up for everyone. So if you Google ESL Open Cup, you can probably figure it out. I mean, if you can't figure it out after Googling, yeah, that's just your loss, I guess. That's just the first step in the process. But it is pretty cool. So you can try your hand at winning one of these tournaments as well. Now, obviously, there will be pro gamers that participate in those brackets. So maybe in one of the early rounds, you're going to have to face off against one of the tournament favorites. Those things happen. I remember back in the day when I used to play a lot of tournaments myself as well. I would play in those online cups, right? I would be in Grandmaster League and I felt very confident about my play. And then you would go up against a pro gamer and you realize, even though you're in the highest league in the game, the skill difference is very significant. I mean, in order to break into Grandmaster League right now, you need like 5.2k MMR on the NA server, and I think it's like 5.6, 5.7k MMR on the EU server. But then the top dogs, right? Well, the top dogs. I guess the top dog, Serral, is sitting there at like 7.4k MMR. So the rank 1 Grandmaster League ladder on the European server compared to like the rank 2, or the rank 200 rather, on the NA server, it's like more than a 2000 MMR difference. Grandmaster League, it is the highest league in the game, but I feel like it could be split up into like 7 different leagues as well, because the skill difference is absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, if you Google ESL Cup, or ESL Open Cup rather, you can certainly sign up yourself as well and see how well you do. So there's one over on the European server, one on the Korean server, and then one on the American server as well every single week. Pretty sweet. So thanks ESL for putting this out. I think it's one of the coolest things, one of the best additions you can make to the game. It really creates like a competitive atmosphere constantly. Really, really nice. Anyhow, let's see what game 2 is gonna look like. So we find ourselves on Simulacrum. I really want to emphasize from game number 1 that Scarlett played a brilliant defensive game. It's very difficult to hold on to your 4 bases where your opponent is playing Mutaling Bane. I was going to say Hydraling Bane, but that's not accurate. When your opponent is playing Mutaling Bane, they have such a mobile army that they can really abuse if you're out of position and you make a slight error. So Scarlett holding on to the bases, I mean, yes, she lost the 3rd base once, but that wasn't without like TLO losing half his army, so it was a very expensive base to take. She really did a great job holding on and playing very, very decisively and very defensively. Just holding every single push and then eventually overrunning the opponent when she finally managed to get to her perfect army composition. I wonder what TLO wants to pull out of his head this time around, because there's no denying that it felt like Scarlett was superior in playing the macro game. There is a pretty significant MMR difference, by the way, between these two players as well. Scarlett probably a few hundred MMR higher at this point. TLO has always been a very good player. Obviously, very creative as well with some of the strategies that he likes to go for. But it sometimes feels like he gets outplayed a little at this level, just because, yeah, like even at the pro level, there's quite a difference between what players can pull off. It's really difficult though to exactly pinpoint as to why that is. I don't know. It's one of the many questions that I see all the time. It's like how do you know what the difference is at this level of play? Like, is it significant? It's like, yeah, it is pretty significant, because some of the pro gamers you will see in tournaments, they will start at like say 6.3, 6.4k MMR, And then once again, the top dogs are sitting at 7k MMR. So somehow, some way, they have like 6, 7, 800 MMR more than other pro gamers. And, you know, that's like a full league. That's like a full league if you're ranking up in StarCraft 2 on the ladder, right? Like the difference between, say, like gold and platinum. It's very significant. So it's very difficult to exactly say what the difference is and you know, how you can really exactly pinpoint that. But you can see, for example, right? Very little has happened this game. So one Zergling died on both sides. And you can see Scarlett being a few supply up. Now, obviously, there's some differences here in build orders and all that. But there's a few supply differences here and there, which is probably primarily coming down to Scarlett spending her larva just a tad bit quicker. Just a tiny little bit quicker. TLO, though, decided to get the upgrade a little bit quicker as well, but it's those small things that add up over time, and it really do make a difference as time goes by. Okay, a little bit of a Ling-Bane skirmish. Yeah, should be dealt with just fine. Nice bit of target firing there by TLO. If he needs to, he can always pull the Queen as well. A couple of Banes actually tried to run around. A couple of them are also coming back home. These Lings in a little bit of trouble. Good pullback right there. Great control here by TLO. Should be able to defend most of this without too many issues. Does seem to lose 2 workers right now. 3 workers. Maybe a 4th one? Oh, transfuse on a worker. That's not something we have all too often. But you can see, during that, right, TLO hit a bit of a oversaturation there on one of the bases. He had to focus all of his attention, whereas on the other side of the map, none of that is happening. It's a small move, but oversaturating a base, it does cost you resources, and it does hurt over time. So very clean game here, once again, by Scarlett. It always feels to me that being the aggressor is much easier in StarCraft 2 than being the defender. So especially defensive play is one of the things that I really admire. This goes for all 3 races. Like, for example, if you compare a stats and a showtime, right? Like in Zerg versus Protoss or Terran versus Protoss, they are so strong defensively. And when you play Protoss, I know Protoss is always regarded as like, you know, people joke about the F2A move, but it's like the biggest lie in StarCraft 2. If you F2A move as Protoss and you're trying to play a defensive game, good luck. It's not going to happen. The all-army hotkey won't do it. You have to be so cautious with everything that you pull out in those kind of games. You have to be so good in order to play a defensive game. But anyways, it looks like Scarlett decides to mix it up a little bit this time around. She still has some Banelings left over from the early game. Apparently wants to load them into an Overlord and then likely drop them off into the mineral line. This is something that's not very common. Scarlett right now flying around with an Overseer as well. This is nice. I like this a lot. Usually if you see the Overseer on the minimap, the little red blip in this case, right, for TLO, you're not going to worry too much about one of those flying things. And he might actually not be paying attention right now. Okay, he does. Does manage to pull the drones away. Good splits here as well. But already this is costing a lot of mining time. Yeah, Scarlett is just going to fly on over to the natural expansion instead. Hello, pay attention. At the same time, there is a bit of a roach push over here, forcing the council on the 4th base. Banes do rain from the sky. No workers were killed, but the 3rd base, or rather the 4th base, was indeed picked off. TLO, though, does already have his Glio Reconstitution, his roach speed upgrade done. That means that he can chase down some of these roaches of Scarlett as well, who decided to cross the map quite early. This is, I guess, a pretty good fight here actually for TLO, right? There's a lot of reinforcing units coming up. Finally, Scarlett is going to be forced to push back, and she does indeed have that speed upgrade right now as well. Makes the roaches much more mobile. TLO in the meantime, by the way, not sticking around on roaches for too long, while he is getting the tunneling claws upgrade as well, and he's also going for burrow. He's also making the transition towards a Hydra den and likely a lurker den pretty shortly afterwards. Tunneling claws is sweet. You can do a lot of damage with it. Hey, actually, oh my god, wait, hold up. I need to go back, 1 sec. Ah, okay, so we're a couple of seconds back into the game right now. This is while that roach push is going on in the center of the map. Scarlett, in the meantime, has also split off a couple of Banelings to walk into the mineral line. That is so much damage. Woo, I was wondering where all of those drones fell. I wondered if maybe Scarlett decided to go back in with a Drop-a-Lord filled with Overlords. Every once in a while, I miss one of those big engagements. Just because I'm observing and obviously casting at the same time. It's difficult to keep track of everything that's happening. But beautiful move there by the Canadian Zerg. Getting a lot of damage done. And slowing down the macro for the opponent quite a bit. Okay, so Drop-a-Lords are coming up once again as well. So, Tunneling Claws, right? You can get all over your opponent's base quite easily. It's another one of those skill checks. It kind of feels like playing Mutaling Bane. If your opponent makes a mistake, you can capitalize on that mistake very easily and obtain the victory that way, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if TLO decides to go in every direction here in just a little bit and try and get a lot of damage done. The thing is, Scarlett has already shown how good she is defensively. Wouldn't be surprised if she's going to feel very comfortable defending against that kind of army as well. So +2 missile actually contaminated for just a bit. I think these roaches in the main will probably be dealt with here. In just a little bit. Actually, nope. They just load back into one of those overlords. And it now also shows those beautiful new blue spines on these roaches. So Scarlett knows what she's going up against. One way of defending, though, is obviously by being very aggressive. Oh, here we go. Actually, oh, this is a big one. Is this spotted? I don't think it's spotted, but TLO barely manages to not get there in time. If we would have, that would have been nice. Now, this is good, actually, as well. Scarlett managed to... or rather, TLO managed to kill the Overlord that the roaches were loaded up in. But now it's becoming a bit of a desperation move for him, though. So, he's got the tunneling claws. He's got a good amount of economy. He's got a good set of upgrades. But he doesn't really have the 4th base, right? So his drone count's still looking healthy. He did decide to remake some of those workers. Scarlett, however, is now mining off of an additional expansion. She's right at this point starting up the transition towards that defensive play. Look at this. So rather than like pushing the advantage more, she's decided to invest the advantage into spine crawlers. Spine crawlers in every mineral line right now will deflect most of those roach tunneling claws pushes. And she's using, once again, this opportunity to now transition towards the lurker den, and then probably lurkers here in just a little bit. Hydras with lurkers once more would certainly not be a bad idea. Okay, so let's see what TLO can pull off right now, because I feel like he needs to pull a rabbit out of a hat. He has the supply disadvantage. Every single base is being scouted here as well by Scarlett, so she knows that there's not a 4th base anywhere. If that's the case, you don't have to push. If you're a full base up, you know your opponent is going to have to expand here one way or another, or go for an all-out assault. And in both scenarios, you're better sitting back or engaging them when they finally do decide to move in. Now, TLO wanted to set up a bit of a sandwich, it looks like. Not going to happen this time around. Forced to run away. Good split off there. He is maxed out, though, and he does have a nice bank coming up as well. I think he probably wants to go for like an all-in, right? I think what he's planning on is just trying to get the correct engagement and then going in for the kill. If he can get the kill on the 4th base, actually, that would be really nice as well. Looks like the army over here will be pushed back. TLO, though, is going to try and see if he can kill some of those spines. At the same time, there's a small skirmish happening up north. Both players engaging at multiple different angles. Scarlett right now trying to see if she can catch this army that's currently on the retreat. And I think TLO is going to be in a little bit of trouble. He's forced to once again send in the army. This time around, once more, units are moving towards that 4th base. Scarlett really out on the map very aggressively. Doesn't necessarily need to be this far. Ravagers now actually get picked off as well. Good pickings there by TLO. Manages to win that engagement for sure. But Scarlett does have that numbers advantage right now, right? She's mining more. Therefore, she can create a bigger army. Hydra's right now coming up as well as the reinforcing unit. Hydra's like really no match just for pure Roach, right? You need Roach Hydra or Hydra Lurker to make them worthwhile. If it's just Hydralisk with a couple of Roaches sprinkled in, it won't happen. And Scarlett, indeed, obtains the victory in this best of 3 series 2-0. Okay, so I didn't look at the results for the NA Cup yet, which is what this best of 3 series was played as part of. So Scarlett went 2-0 against MSRM, she went 2-1 against Jim Rising, 2-0 against TLO in the semifinals, and then 3-0 against Nice in the grand finals. So Scarlett ended up winning the very first ESL Open Cup #1 for the Americas. Nicely done right there by her. I know that she spends a lot of the time over in South Korea, so the Korean tournaments are certainly going to be a little bit harder to participate in. So, by the way, just to clarify, I believe, and you will have to double check this, but I believe you can participate in any of those weekly tournaments. So if you wanted to play in Korea, you could. It's just going to primarily determine what server the games will be played on. So I don't think it's a regional lock-in, but it's like a server lock-in. So if you decide to sign up, say you're in Europe and you decide to sign up for the Korean weekly tournament, you can, I believe, but you are going to have to play on the Korean server. So that's primarily going to, it's going to primarily be pretty bad for your ping. It's going to make it much harder to get a proper game going if you especially play ZVZ with, say, more than 200 ping. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, hit that like button down below. If you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as I upload more. And other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile. And I'll see you once again in the next one.